What's up, guys? Aaron J. Daigle here to talk about defeating the distractions. We often know what we're supposed to do, but just can't seem to figure out how to stay focused on accomplishing those things in our ministry, our business, our family, whatever goals we're pursuing. We desire to make it happen, but often get sidetracked with so many other things. And what I'd like to show you in this video is that by relying on Jesus, we can stay focused on His will for us while defeating the distractions that are trying to prevent us from doing so. So let's start by talking about Jesus Christ Himself and what is often the most overlooked attribute about His character. And that is the fact that He was hyper focused on His mission. We've heard so much about how powerful He is, how knowledgeable He is, how much healing He did, but so few people talk about His intense focus. Even when He was 12 years old and His parents said, "What are you doing? Why did you stay here?" He said, "I must be about my Father's business." On another occasion, they tried to make Him king and He slipped through the crowd and got away from them because becoming a literal earthly king for Israel was not His mission. His whole purpose was to come to earth, show us the ways of the kingdom, teach us, and then die for us so that we can be saved. And everything about Him was focused on that particular goal, just like it was focused on smashing the like button for the YouTube algorithm. And since we're supposed to be like Jesus, if you want to go ahead and turn that gray like button blue to help out with the YouTube channel, I would greatly appreciate it. Now let's ask ourselves, what is it that is distracting us? Perhaps God has put it in your heart to start, develop, and grow a particular ministry in your church. Maybe your children are young and this is the season to invest in them and grow them and train them up in the way they should go. Perhaps God is shifting you away from employment and into entrepreneurship that you can learn to become a financial support to the kingdom. Or maybe someone you care about is in prison, dealing with a drug addiction, getting abused in a relationship, and you were the person God put in their life to help them walk through this. So right now in your season, the will of God and the purpose for you is to help them. But while all this is amazing, there are so many other things that call our attention. And sometimes we don't acknowledge these things as actual distractions because they may not necessarily be bad. So I'm not talking about feeling called to ministry, but getting distracted by making plans to go rob a bank. What could be distracting us from the ministry God has called us to is another ministry that is demanding our attention. Or we could not be investing in our children because we're tied up in some problematic relationship with a distant family member. Or maybe we're not helping the people we're supposed to be helping because we're too tied up helping people that God never intended for us to help. What I'm saying is good things will distract us from God things, especially when the God things aren't pleasurable and the good things are. Let me show you what I mean from Matthew 16 verses 21 through 23, which says that from then on Jesus began to tell His disciples plainly that it was necessary for Him to go to Jerusalem and that He would suffer many terrible things at the hands of the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of religious law. He would be killed, but on the third day He would be raised from the dead. But Peter took Him aside and began to reprimand Him for saying such things. "Heaven forbid, Lord," he said. "This will never happen to you." Jesus turned to Peter and said, "Get away from me, Satan. You are a dangerous trap to me. You are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God's." You see, the will of the Father was for the man, Jesus Christ, to die on that cross for our sins. And when Jesus focused on the God purpose for His life, and Peter stepped up and said, "No, I have a good purpose for you, and it's not going to involve all that pain," Jesus looked at him and said, "Get away from me, Satan. Because even though you're trying to stop me from experiencing something that may not feel good to my flesh, you're also distracting me from the God purpose for my life. And even though hanging out with you and setting up an earthly kingdom would be a really good thing, it would not be the God thing." So focus isn't about saying yes. It's about saying no. You see, we already know what we need to do, but in order to do it, we need to flex that no muscle to say no to everything else that's trying to stop us from doing it. And that's what Christ did with Peter. His goal was to go to the cross and die. And even though Peter was throwing out a good option, Jesus knew he had to say no to that good opportunity in order to say yes to the God opportunity. We sometimes try to figure out how to focus and stay on track in life by figuring out what it is we need to do and all the different things we need to say yes to. But focus is really about wisdom. And even though knowledge is about accumulating stuff, wisdom is about eliminating stuff. So since we already have an intuitive sense of what God has called us to do, it's easy to figure out what our yes is. What becomes more challenging is figuring out how to say no to all of the other things. So then how do we do that? Well, Philippians 4:13 says, "For I can do everything through Christ who gives me strength." You see, we get direction from the prayer room. When we rely on Christ to make our path clear, then His word becomes a lamp to our feet, guiding us and showing us where to go, what to do, and what to say no to. And by trusting God to help us say no and focus on His purpose for our life, we then experience the promise that He gave us in 2 Timothy chapter 1, verse 7, which says, "For God has not given us a spirit of fear and timidity, but of power, love, and self-discipline." Now, what we must see here is that distractions come from three different sources: the devil, other people, and ourselves. But God says that when you rely on Him to help you focus on what He has called you to do, He will give you power, love, and self-discipline. So let's tie those three distractions with those three empowerments together. The first distraction is the devil, and the first empowerment is power. Now, the Greek word for power in this biblical context is all the power I've gotten ever since I've been as rich as Bill Gates. Okay, seriously? Power gives you the ability to have dominion and authority over the devil. On one occasion, the disciples were not able to cast out a spirit. They later go to Jesus and ask Him why, and He says, because this kind only comes out by prayer and fasting. So when we engage in these activities in order to pursue God, rely on Him, and trust on the power that He gives us, it then empowers us to break those strongholds that are trying to distract us. It gives us authority over the enemy and helps us to stay focused with what God has called us to do. Now, the second distraction is other people, and the second empowerment is love. Now, the Greek word for love in this biblical context is the fact that my wife just simply can't get enough of me. Okay, seriously, we should focus on reaching others and helping others. All ministries point in this direction. But when we start allowing what people do to us to stop us from doing for them what God has called us to do in their lives, we can lose focus of that priority. So when God empowers us with His love, it gives us the ability to look beyond how people treat us in order to continue to minister to them. Otherwise, we'd be distracted with anger and bitterness and offense and getting frustrated with how people are treating us and what they're doing. And all this pettiness can completely sidetrack us from what God is wanting to actually do in these people's lives. And this concept reminds me of a principle my wife lives her life by. She says, "I act based on my own values. I do not react based on the actions of others." In other words, my wife is a kind person. If somebody treats her rudely, she's still going to be kind to them because she's not going to react to what they're doing. She's going to live out her values and stick to her principles regardless of what other people do to her. Well, that is love that God has put in her heart, which empowers her to overlook the distractions and the pettiness and things that happen in interpersonal conflicts so that she can maintain that influence in people's lives and continue building up the kingdom of God and helping them to mature in their walk with Christ. Now, the third distraction comes from ourselves, and the third empowerment is self-discipline. Now, the Greek word for self-discipline in this biblical context is the Greek word I applied to my life in all of my training in order to fight like this. And aside from that, it means prudence and wisdom. Now, an aspect of God's wisdom is that it will save you from worthless pursuits. And many distractions are internal pursuits that we've developed and grabbed onto that we're now chasing that really have no impact in the greater scheme of life. In order to disengage from those distractions, I need God's empowerment, that He would give me the discipline over myself to make decisions that are in the best interest of His will for my life rather than my own comfort in the moment. It's this self-discipline that helps us deal with the fact that yes, we know what to do, but how do we make ourselves do it? We discipline ourselves to make it happen. So by relying on Christ and trusting on His strength, He gives us the power to overcome demonic distractions, the love to overcome people's distractions, and the self-discipline to overcome personal distractions. So it's time for us to stop focusing on what we're fighting and start focusing on what we're fighting for. You see, God has a purpose for your ministry, your life, your church. He has plans for your family and your finances. God created you on purpose and has a purpose for you, and that purpose is what you're fighting for. And in this process, you'll get sidetracked and hit with so many things left and right. These battles may be the things you're fighting, but they're not the things you're fighting for. Let's stay focused and defeat the distractions. And thank you so much for watching. I hope I've helped you overcome some things that have been trying to trip you up and help to move you forward in life. In addition to these videos, I also publish books, and if you'd like to check them out and see how they can help you grow more in God, I'll link them in the description below. You can see what's up there and grab whichever one would help you move forward in life. And look, if you haven't done so already and wouldn't mind liking the video, it helps so much with the channel. I totally appreciate it. I'd also love for you to join the community, subscribe, stay updated with all the videos through the notifications bell. And again, thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you in the next video together.